Alrighty, we are doing another lesson. And I made a PowerPoint. This one, snickerdoodles. Hopefully that's visible. Whatever, it's good enough. So we are gonna talk about inspirational insults, y'all, and how to transform them into something that's beyond the surface layer. Because again, whenever someone tries to insult you, they're actually inspired. Whatever you did inspired them to take whatever is occurring internally, their thoughts, and articulate them to you. That is a huge compliment, y'all. That is a huge compliment. So we're gonna go through some examples of some compliments. So this person said, I understand completely. You lied, right? They feel deceived from something. And so I said, I had a rather sentimental moment reading your words, so thank you for that opportunity. Right? How many times has someone ever been accused of lying or something, and it was just a misunderstanding, and you're aware that a misunderstanding occurred, but you're being accused of lying? And I'm just like, oh, so many good memories associated with that, right? So I said, I suppose from a certain perspective, you could say I denied you access to the truth. But then from the same perspective, you could say you were too ignorant to be aware of it. Therefore, you couldn't even perceive it. You can pick which option you desire to believe. Because again, I think I've showed many demonstrations or examples on my videos where obvious misunderstanding has occurred with some of the comments, and I've utilized them as like a learning opportunity for others and to demonstrate how to interpret that and not to propagate misunderstanding further. I can't make people understand what is hidden in plain sight, right? If someone doesn't understand the nuances of words or doesn't read descriptions, what am I supposed to do? I don't know. Make them aware of it at least, right? So that was an example of that. Here's another one. Ooh, I love these. No, I perceive your ignorance easily. It's sad, really. I will keep the hope alive you find truth in your heart. I forget what the conversation we were having, but again, guys, I try to utilize the word ignorance because it's not as harsh as some of the other words that people utilize when they're trying to describe what they're perceiving. Some people like to use the words, you'll see like retard, stupid, idiot, sinful, shame, embarrassing, things like that. Things that try to invoke surface layer meaning. And I'm just like, guys, if you desire inspirational conversation, right, you have to go deeper than this rudimentary misunderstanding and this way to provoke emotional response in a very primitive way. And so I wrote back, you need to go a little deeper with your words if you're trying to express passion. I would have described it as a level of ignorance so profound that the capacity to perceive what is laid barren in plain sight is jarring with how blatantly blind I am. Like so blind, I make a literal blind man feel like he has sight. Because he was trying to say like he could perceive my ignorance. I'm like, okay, well go deeper, right? Like demonstrate how ignorant I am. And so I said, I would have described my ignorance this way. I would have described that ignorance so profound that the capacity to perceive what is laid barren in plain sight is jarring with how blatantly blind I am. Like so blind, I make a literal blind man feel like he has sight. Something like that would have perhaps caused an emotional connection you were desiring. You can try again if you desire. Arrogance is usually a good choice. Because again, a lot of people like to utilize the word arrogance too when describing clarity, and that's fine. Again, I don't mind whatever words people utilize to describe what they're perceiving, because it's not a reflection of me. It's a reflection of how they interpret and perceive the world and understand the world. And because I'm aware of that, I'm not going to necessarily propagate or try not to propagate misunderstanding or anything like that. And I don't know how else to encourage people to be honest and vulnerable and express themselves. It's a safe place to express yourself without invoking any sort of like shame or embarrassment. So this next one's a good one. This person says, you are officially a retard. Your reward is in the mail, ready for shipment. Oh, guys, that is so nice. Someone basically gave me a compliment and called me a retard, and then talked about how they have something in the mail for me, like a gift. That's so kind. And so I wrote back saying, oh, I love gifts. You are too kind. By all means, send away. I assume you have my address already since you mentioned it's already ready for shipment. I appreciate the kind gesture, although I am a bit confused how you got my address, and also how the package is in the mail but is still ready for shipment. Regardless, that is quite the demonstration of effort, so I wanted to acknowledge it. Because again, right, it's obvious they were trying to make some sort of surface level insult, and it didn't quite register because I was like, okay, because what I perceived was, you're sending me a gift. And it's because you think I'm a retard. And what are retards known for but being special, okay? I'm aware I'm special, and I'm so thankful that you're sending me a gift. However, I was confused about how they got my address. So I was curious, and so I wanted clarification on that. And so they ended up offering clarification, and I love it. They said, in the mail, meaning in the mailroom. Ready for shipment, meaning hasn't left the mailroom yet. Oh, ding, 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 this person works in the mailroom because they're familiar with that. I had no idea that's how like the mailing process works. Because looking at it with someone that's unfamiliar, if something's in the mail ready for shipment, I'm like, how can it be in the mail and simultaneously ready for shipment at the same time? And he clarified it. And so this clued me in too, like, he's familiar with how the mail process works, which means he must work in some sort of postal or shipping capacity, some way, his job. And then he said, it seems it took you a lot of brain power to try and figure that one out. So I figure I give you the training wheel assist in the right direction. Hope this helps. And again, he's reflecting on himself, right? It seems it took you a lot of brain power to try and figure that one out. So if you substitute pronouns, because again, this isn't a reflection on me. Obviously, I'm not struggling to figure anything out. He was struggling there. And so essentially what he's saying, it seems it took me a lot of brain power to try and figure that one out. So I figured I'd give me the training wheel assist in the right direction. And he did. He gave himself that assist. And so what I wrote back to him, I said, oh, apologies. I get the context now. Do you work with the Postal Service? I actually have a rather impressive stamp collection because I've been stockpiling them for when I need them. I've always been so fascinated by the behind the scenes of how transporting physical letters and mail occurs. It's rather remarkable that it even exists. Billions of physical pieces of paper, packages, and words are exchanged through the service. It's extraordinary. Tell me that isn't extraordinary. And he never responded back. That's when the conversation ended. So again, I can't make people be inspired to continue conversation, right? When they're used to articulating themselves in primitive, nuanced logic and words, and all of a sudden they're met with someone that doesn't necessarily articulate themselves with the same emotional primitive reflexes, they get confused, and the only other thing they can do is back away. I don't know how else to invite them into further conversation. Oh, this one was a good one. This was an emoji, like a GIF, a HIF, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, Giphy, that blinked. And it said the word heresy detected, and it just blinked. And it has heresy, 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 heresy. Oh, it's so adorable. And so that's what someone wrote back to me. That just responded back to something. And I was just like, okay, like, interesting. And so I said, that's weak effort to invoke any sort of feeling of embarrassment or shame. Go deeper if you desire an actual emotional response. It helps to utilize different words besides repeating the same one 5 times. Because on the slide, heresy is repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they say heresy 5 times and then detected to articulate themselves. And I was like, so essentially what they did was say heresy, 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 detected. It's okay. Sometimes it helps to articulate yourself and explain what you're feeling if you utilize more than just 2 words, especially one word over and over again. It doesn't look very rational, okay? It doesn't look very rational. And so the person said, it's just a funny GIF, capital GIF, I like to drop when people revive 1,000-year-old heresies. And I love the word GIF because, again, it spells fig backwards, or it spells if. You can do so much with it, especially the word heresies. And so I wrote back saying, you are quite the walking paradox of cognition. It is quite a funny fig. And I was playing on GIF. I don't know if they caught that, though. It is quite a funny fig that revives thousands of year-old heresies. Heresies is a fun word. It coincidentally also spells I see her. And it can get even more whimsical if you can perceive I see her here. That's 3 letters. That's 3 letters make by spelling. That's 3 layers deep of pattern recognition that includes recursive mathematical principles that perhaps science may study in the future. Because if you take the words heresies, you can invoke 3 layers where you have to utilize certain words twice or certain letters twice, and that is invoking recursive mathematic principles, which science, again, has not learned the nuances of yet. But do you see how it works? Cognition, what you cognitively can perceive and articulate, is modeled in what is observed. And so if you're able to perceive past the surface layer and you can perceive all the nuances, a lot of people call this flow state or inspiration or subconscious, right? To perceive on the subconscious layer, to perceive all those nuances. Because if there's any part of your cognition, the human cognition, that is capable of perceiving patterns, it's the subconscious, and the subconscious is aware of them, and it's constantly trying to get the conscious mind, which I argue is called the unconscious mind, to understand those patterns that the subconscious is storing and programmed and working off of. And again, those movement patterns, right? Before anything gets defined to definition in words, your subconscious, your conscious mind, cognition, is capable of perceiving movement and then articulating it in a way that is able to understand or grasp, that has meaning. Oh, so good. This one's going to be too long to go into because I'm running out of time. But I wanted to talk about this because, guys, I'm aware that a lot of LDS people are under the gun because there's a lot of things out there with people saying like LDS isn't Christian or doing all sorts of inspirational things. That is the biggest compliment, y'all, because someone else out there, these complete strangers, these people, even people that are like familiar with the paradigm, they're so inspired by the paradigm and what they perceive that they have to share their thoughts and express them. And the only way that they can express them, or they're aware of how to articulate themselves, is perhaps in a nuanced and negative way. But that's just surface layer. Basically, LDS is being given this extraordinary opportunity, being like, can you guys perceive past the surface layer of this feeling of invocation of fear, embarrassment, and shame? And I would argue y'all are doing it, because the framework itself has tackling fears and being openly vulnerable embedded into the framework. If you go into their services, you'll see that they naturally enable people, empower people to face their fears, like public speaking, getting behind that pulpit and talking to the congregation, especially on like